What's up?
We're back from a little boot camp desert weekend.
Is it I feel like for it to be a boot camp, it has to be 3 days.
No.
Mini boot camp?
Mini boot camp.
Okay, what's your definition of a training boot camp then?
Anytime I have to drive somewhere to train that's not within 10 minutes from my house.
Anytime you're training outside of your zip code?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, then we definitely did a little boot camp.
Yeah, I mean, we went and you ran a 100-mile week, your first ever 100-mile week.
101.2 miles.
Wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I guess I expected like a mariachi band to pop out of the woodwork and for someone to hand me a certificate telling me I'm a badass, and I was gonna immediately be handed like, a pro running contract on a silver platter. And unfortunately, I am disappointed to report that I am absolutely no different than I was before I ran a 101-mile week.
I also have a deep love for external validation. And
no, I mean, I say that just because, like, I feel like people put the 100-mile week on a pedestal.
Oh,
and honestly, I kind of never thought I would do it. I never feel like it was just never an actual goal I had, especially because like I had run a 100-mile race. So I was like, well, I know I can do it, like technically I've run like 140 miles in a week, right. But like, it's not the thing in and of itself that changes you. It's like the process getting there. And I feel like, I mean, there was maybe an earlier version of myself. I mean, I remember the first time I ran a 60-mile week, I thought I was the biggest badass. And like, I was.
Oh, me too.
Like, I think that, like you get to those certain like markers in your training, or like the first time I started doing doubles, I was like, I'm a real runner now. And by the time you actually become, I feel like you're actually a real runner when all of those things kind of stop mattering.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I'm pumped that I ran my biggest week ever. I'm trying to be really, really disciplined about my recovery, which is hard because I can't just like, put in my email signature, sorry if my responses are slow, I just ran 101 miles and I am actually stupid today. I wish I could.
A little bit of brain fog.
A little bit of brain fog. Or like shout out to all of my athletes who have had to witness me eating on our coaching calls. You guys are the real MVPs for allowing me to do that. And again, like I'm not any different. I don't think that doing stuff like that in training gets you anything. You don't just turn your training in to get racing awards, and it's all going to be about how I'm able to adapt to that training and then how I'm actually able to execute on it on race day. But I'm really pumped that, over the course of the last 6 years, I've put together enough 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. I feel like I've actually only ever run 3 90-plus, maybe like 3 or 4 90-plus mile weeks
Have
ever.
they all been within the last 6 to 8 weeks?
No, I ran my first 90-mile week getting ready for Western States. I ran my second getting ready for Run Rabbit. I actually don't even think I ran one getting ready for Leadville. I can't even remember. Again, like, I don't even know if I remember the first time I ran it, because I was like, wow, I did it. And like, now I'm like, yeah, whatever. I did 2 90-mile weeks in a month.
Yeah.
3 90-plus mile weeks.
Right.
And I guess I wish like me 5 years ago could see, because like I remember showing up to the start line of ultras and like knowing I was running less than a lot of the women I was competing against, but also the story I told myself at that time was like, I don't need to run all those miles. I'm training really efficiently and I'm really healthy. Mm-hmm. And now conversely, I'm telling myself a different story of I am a badass. I can, handle this amount of training load and adapt because I have come a long way in my consistency and recovery. So I think that's funny that like my brain finds a way to take whatever I'm currently doing and tell myself it's the best thing I could possibly be doing.
I think that's a good story to tell yourself.
Oh yeah, you don't want to tell yourself you're a fucking moron. That's not helpful.
Well, you did it within the prescribed time that you were given by your coach. And I
Correct.
think that's huge, because when we were talking in the car on the way over to do our second of the 2 long runs for the weekend, you're like, I think I'm going to run 100-mile week. And I was like, oh, you should definitely like do whatever it takes to get that 100-mile week, Zoe. You know, even if that means doing more than prescribed, you can finally hit that benchmark. And you're like, yeah, that would be the best thing that I could possibly do. And then I saw you during your run. I was finishing up mine, and I was like, why are you still going out? And I was like, she's definitely trying to get that 100-mile week.
I ran exactly the amount of time prescribed by my coach.
Yep.
Actually, when I was doing the calculations in my head, I was like, okay, 4 hours. I know I run, about this pace on these trails. I was like, man, I bet I'm going to run exactly 99 miles this week. That's hilarious. I can't wait to... I produced the Between Two Pines podcast, and we have a Strava club called the Strava Edging Club, where we encourage people to edge their Strava runs, where that's where you run like 9.99 miles instead of 10.
Right.
And then you just stop at 0.99. And I was like, I'm definitely going to like run like a 99.99 mile week.
But you didn't, and you didn't go over.
And I didn't try. I didn't do it on purpose.
That's so
I
cool.
literally didn't realize I was going to run a 100-mile week till I like pulled up my training on the way to the trailhead.
It's just a byproduct of doing the work.
Again, all you have to do is train consistently and relentlessly for 6 years. It's so easy. I don't know why everyone doesn't do it.
It has no meaning.
It has no meaning.
The meaning you prescribe to it.
Exactly. Which is why I like it,
Yeah.
Like, you can achieve something you never thought was possible, and, like, I still have to, I come home and Bowie still looks at me like, yeah, gonna give me dinner? Like, I don't give a shit what you just did. So... shout out to the pets that keep us humble.
Good work out there.
Although I will also say that Bowie ran her peak. She did 9 miles last week.
Wow.
So shout out to Bowie, who is
fittest
putting
dog.
together monster weeks.
All right. What are we getting into today here before we lose the people?
Before we live, they're like, Jesus Christ. We're going to do a power ranking of our top 3 favorite races.
Okay, all right.
Then we got a listener question about running your first ultra, the science of training with a weighted vest, and then we're going to spend some time talking about, poignantly, how to build training volume without getting hurt. And that's for road runners, ultra runners, whether you're new to running, whether you're trying to run that 101.1 mile week, wherever you're at, those principles don't change a ton.
All right, we got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get into our power rankings. What is your top favorite race?
My third favorite race.
Third. Okay.
So let's
Number
do like
3.
3, 2, 1. So
Okay.
like to build tension and build stoke.
Is this
to build
races,
drama?
Is this races that you've done, or is this races that you enjoy to spectate or crew?
I'm gonna say my 3 favorite races I've run in terms of like just how much I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Not like the experience of it.
All right. Give us your third.
My third would be the Run Rabbit 100.
Okay.
I think it's
Popular.
a super fun race. I love that it's like, they treat the elites really, really well. The elite field starts at high noon and runs through the night, which is kind of fun and funky. And you're not allowed to have a pacer, so you have to run it by yourself. And the tortoises, or like the primary field, starts in the morning. So the whole race, you're running up through the tortoises. And I actually, I'm very social when I run. And I just love that, for 23 hours, I just got to, run with new people and, see people doing, doing really hard things, and see people having a tough time and working through it, or seeing people, achieve something they never thought was possible. And you get to have all these little micro connections with the tortoise as you run. I was also trying to catch Coach Kyle. I thought if I had a really great race, I could maybe catch him, but he also had a really great race and finished super strong, and I was not able to catch Coach Kyle. He had already finished and had a shower and a nap by the time I rolled in. Shout out to Kyle. He's the best. And I just think that's a really, I love how that race is really particular. I love races that reward becoming a student of the race and getting to know the race in and of itself. So
Nice.
The Run Rabbit 100 is one of my favorites.
Okay. All
Also,
right.
it's a nonprofit, and the race directors are really nice people. Shout out Fred and Paul.
Yeah, we have a lot of athletes who do this race every year, and we're racing it. So
Couples race.
Cool.
Wow, so cute. We're going to get married and then we're going to start running all of our races together.
Oh, God.
Are we about to become the worst couple in trail running?
Sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah, those sound like the worst people.
Just so happened one time.
It just works out good
all
for the
of our
schedule.
A races are the same.
It's just convenient.
All right. How about my third favorite?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, man. Athens Big Fork Trail Marathon.
Ooh, love it. Tell me why.
Yeah. Just a really cool mom and pop race on a very hard course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love a good challenge and then literally no validation at the end when you finish.
Yeah, there's literally just a dude with a clipboard to make sure you didn't die, and then you get to like hand write down your time, not that it matters at all in any way.
Yeah.
And then you get to eat chili in the woods with like there's no cell phone service anywhere out there. Like you literally have to spend 2 days off the grid to do this race.
Yep.
It's also like it feels like a UTMB race in the middle of the Ozarks, or technically the Ouachita Mountains, but it's a marathon that has like 9,000 feet of climbing and descending in Arkansas.
It's steep, it's technical, and you kind of just have to do it for you because you want to, because there's no fanfare.
None.
The people are super awesome, great community, but again, like, you're not gonna like win money.
We did win a small jar of honey one time.
It's not gonna improve your ITRA score
no,
or
I'm
your
gonna submit
UTMB
mine
index.
to. I'm gonna contest my UTMB index on the count that I have the female CR at Athens. They should up my index.
All right, what's your second favorite race?
My second favorite race is the Telluride Mountain Run, the 40-mile edition. I'm probably the 24-mile version is like all hits, no filler version of that, but I also like longer races. And the Telluride Mountain Run is a sick loop. I also love that, like, in the US, races are always trying to be a specific distance, whereas in Europe, they're like from one point to another point. Like, they make sense given the geography.
Yeah.
So I always admire races that are like just a more aesthetic line versus like, well, I just want to jog in a loop for 100 miles. Like, that doesn't speak to me. I want to move with the landscape on its own terms, I guess. And the Telluride Mountain Run is so cool because you get to spend a ton of time in the Alpine. And there's literally like a class 3 ridge traverse in the middle of this race. They call it the Mile of Sky. I don't think it's a mile long, but it's definitely some of the slowest running I've ever done in a race in terms of like it's scramboozling. And I love Telluride. You just get to spend some cool time in the San Juans, really up high. It's not a trail race, it's a mountain run, so it's not something I would recommend for like baby's first trail race, but if you love the specific texture of the San Juans, by which I mean steep and chossy as hell, then this could be for you.
Yeah, great race. Okay, since you stole my
Was TMR yours too?
Yeah, I'll go with what do I like? UTMB CCC.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Classic.
A lot of fanfare. Just a really stunning course.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's like ridiculously pretty.
So pretty. Such long, relentless climbs and descents, but not overly technical. So you can kind of move well on it. Yeah. I think that is just an exceptional like race course.
Yeah.
Really, really pretty incredible. Okay, what's your top spot?
This is not a unique take, but the Western States 100. It's a little race called Western
States. What races have I done? Oh, I've done that one. Yeah, Leadville. Forgot that one.
I love like the course is fascinating because the first 50K is like alpine running. The middle 50K are these like hot as fuck torture canyons where you just bake and baste your quads in lactic acid for hours on end, and it's just really it's net downhill, so your legs are exploded, and then the last 20 miles of the race is like a track meet. It's like very flat, and I think the course is like a fascinating puzzle in and of itself, and the strategy of the course is really interesting. But I think the thing that really moved me, and I'd be curious to get your take, is it was the race where I was first like, oh shit, this is like how in my head we should all treat trail running. Like everyone there was taking it so seriously in a positive way
Yeah.
and was pursuing their version of excellence.
I mean, even the volunteers.
Yeah, exactly. Like I
so
think
cool.
the volunteers, like their approach of just like, I am here to help you have the best day possible, and like I've just never felt so taken care of by total strangers. And that really moved me because, like, in my head, I take my running really, really seriously. And then sometimes it's annoying when I go to, for me, this is just like I think everyone's allowed to have the relationship with running that they want. I don't love sometimes the strains in ultra running that I feel like worship at the altar of mediocrity. This, like, I'm just here to finish kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, that attitude. I'll just get by.
that just doesn't resonate with me. And there's no one like that at Western States. Everyone has been like working hard for years to get in. Everyone has trained their asses off. And the volunteers are all there to like support you doing this incredible thing on this historic course with 300 other people who also worked hard and also care a bunch. And I just never felt as much like I was surrounded by just people who were like on the same wavelength as me. Like no one was there to just be like, oh, whatever happens, happens. Like everyone wanted to have a good fucking day.
Yeah.
Everyone had worked so hard and was not ashamed about caring. And I feel like that context of like communal vulnerability is really special. And I would love to see more of that in trail running. And just like, let's allow ourselves to take it seriously. And that doesn't mean that you have to like be elite or you have to be fast. I would love to see more people saying like, I want to do my best and I'm going to work hard for it. And I'm going to swing big and I'm going to talk about it and I'm not going to be ashamed. So shout out to Western States.
Really cool thing about Western States. I love that. Yeah, great. Well, since you stole another one of mine.
Okay, you got CCC. I get Western States.
Okay. I think, oh my God. It's too tough. Golden Leaf Half Marathon. I'm going to throw a curveball out there. Golden
Half
Leaf
marathon?
Half Marathon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Really amazing
Isn't this where you
colors.
broke your ankle?
No. I did roll my ankle.
Okay.
There. One time that I did it. I've done the race a couple times. Just a great course in the heart of Aspen, between Aspen and Snowmass, point to point. Beautiful fall colors.
Also net downhill.
Yes, but does start with a long, challenging uphill.
Yeah.
And then traverses rolling downhill towards Aspen. It's just a cool course. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to run fast on trail in a half with some vert, I think it's a great opportunity for that. Tons of people do it. It's got a good vibe. And
Shout out to Coach Kristen, who I believe, if she doesn't have the CR, has one of the fastest times on that course.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very speedy.
Yeah. And I wanted to just, it doesn't have to be about an ultra,
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
you can have a transcendent day at a half marathon.
Yeah, exact. And like, I've never actually done like a real road. I've done some like small road races, but I've never had like, and this is not to say like, you don't have to run a long way. You don't have to run Western States for your goals to matter or for your running ambition to be valid. Like someone who can throw down at a half marathon, way more fucking impressive than some guy who's trying to walk a 100 in my opinion.
It is impressive. Like, going that hard for like an hour and 28 minutes or whatever is like, it sucks. It hurts.
Yeah. So whatever mindset you bring, I think like that's the part that I think is so cool, rather than like speed or ability necessarily. And I just like longer stuff. Wish I didn't, honestly. It would probably give me a lot of hours in my day back. But, we like what the heart wants what it wants. And my heart just wants to pay $400 3 times a year to get chafed in public. So.
Oh, my God. Think about the time that you'd spend doing other stuff if you didn't run ultras.
I am so close to finishing the sweater that I've been knitting since literally Election Day. So, can't wait. Just have to finish one sleeve. And then I'm gonna have a sweater.
So close.
I'm very close.
All right, let's get into.
I've been edging this sweater.
Let's get into our listener question, Zoe.
Yes. Okay. Listener question. I want to step up to the ultramarathon distance in 2025. What are the differences in training, and how will I know that I'm ready? How do you work with athletes to know when they're ready to level up, whether it's that first ultra, first 50 miler, first 100, or even first marathon?
Well, let me get in with a hot take.
Oh,
it's not about whether you feel ready or not. It's about whether the evidence supports that you're ready, that it's the next logical step. So instead
What evidence do you have people look for?
I look at what does your previous training look like?
Ooh.
What is your previous race history? What events have you done? What discrete steps have you made that then put you in a position to go for this next thing?
Yeah.
A lot of people, you're kind of alluding to this, like, well, I can just get by and finish. That's not what we're about at Microcosm. We're about pursuing excellence, doing the very best that you personally can do. If that's just finishing the race,
but it's
fine.
not just finishing; it's finishing.
Right.
You know,
sure. Finish.
We never just finish a race. We finish with excellence, whatever it means for you, particularly on that given day.
Yes, but not with that mentality of like, well, I could do it if I just walked it.
Right.
That kind of attitude.
Like, I'm not going to train specifically.
We want to take the specific evidence that you have, that body of evidence, and then use that to inform the step up in distance. If you're thinking about a feeling, you might wait a heck of a long time until you have the right feeling that then, okay, I feel good, so I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
You never want to wait for feelings to dictate what you're going to do with your life. Use the evidence that you have to then, make a step towards that thing. So that's the first place I go with athletes who want to make that step from running a marathon to running an ultra.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and that works in any distances. It doesn't have to be like ultra distance, but it could be like 5K to 10K or whatever it is. I've run a 10K, but I really want to do a marathon. That's my dream.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where are you at? What does the evidence say you're prepared to train for?
Right.
And do right now? And I think it's also just important to understand that there's ultras are totally different than a marathon.
Yeah. They're a totally different beast. Yeah. They're not just longer marathons. It's a totally different experience, and there are unique physical and mental demands. So I would really like folks to think of it as getting into a new sport, one where adaptability and resilience matter more than speed.
Yeah, totally. Like your unique talents and skills as like a marathoner may not totally transfer to ultra running,
right.
And your skills as an ultra runner may not totally translate to marathon running or other disciplines. But the cool thing about ultra running is that I think it's more accepting of a broader kind of skill set and a broader range of talents, which is really cool. If you give yourself the time and the runway to really train for these things, you can start to see oh, I do have some natural gifts I didn't know were there that really lend to being successful at this stuff.
Yeah, and I think another big thing, especially from folks coming from the roads to trails, is really getting in touch with RPE. When you're training for marathon, half marathon, you're really specifically thinking of a pace. You have your marathon pace, you know what that is, you know how to execute on race day. For an ultra, you're going off RPE. You can't maintain, unless again, it's like a loop course and you're, Nick Curry trying to negative split a 100-mile track race, which,
shout out.
Cool. But you're going off effort. And I actually really love that as an athletic skill set that I think everyone should get curious about, is how to get in better touch with not just letting your watch boss you around, but actually getting in touch with your body and your effort level.
And then there's also the specificity of these events that's, significantly different than racing a marathon. Marathons can have hills and things like that, but technically, they're typically not technical. There's no rock gardens and roots and ledges and long, steep climbs that take an hour to get up and over. With ultramarathoning, I mean, the terrain really dictates to you what you're able to do sometimes and how fast you're able to go, and also the kind of gear and equipment you have to have. So there's just a lot of nuance in there, and unpredictability in the conditions that you really need to start to think about and train for in order to be effective.
Right. I think another big thing is the nutritional aspect of it is super, super different in terms of how much food you'll be carrying with you. Again, we always emphasize the 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour, potentially going upwards depending on your individual tolerance and goals. But your body needs a lot more during an ultramarathon. So really making sure that one of the big differences in training is testing and implementing that ultramarathon nutrition and hydration strategy.
And I love the shift to running by time versus my miles. That most I can't believe there's still coaches out there that coach trail runners with miles. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm so glad that I saw the light a couple years ago as a coach.
The time light.
Yeah, and it's just time is a much better proxy for stress when you are an ultra runner or a trail runner in general, because again, the unpredictability of the conditions of the trail and the variability of the terrain, that all has to be accounted for in terms of the stress. And so, 5 miles run around your house can be a heck of a lot different in stress
than 5 miles up a 14er.
Yeah. So making that transition to time-based training, I think, is really huge.
Yeah.
And very important for athletes looking to make that step.
A lot of times when I'm doing my deep dives or like my face-to-face calls with athletes who are interested in like, I want to do my first 50 or my first 100, how different is the training? I still have a job, I'm still a mom, and honestly the training isn't like wildly different week in, week out. Like ideally you're already getting a solid base of consistency running 5 days a week, maybe 6, or having that 6th flex day and a solid rest day every week. But when I have athletes that are really starting to race longer distances, I don't drastically up their midweek volume.
Yeah.
We do focus a little more on putting more emphasis on the long run and back-to-back long runs to help build that endurance, build that durability, and help with fatigue resistance. But again, I'm not having my athletes run 20 miles on a weekday.
I think you got to use the time you have available, right? And that's one of the bonuses that you can kind of get that outside perspective on that when you work with the coach, and you can help to, see where do these stresses belong.
Yeah.
Look, like it's obvious for people who aren't working on the weekend, like that's probably when you can do the most training.
Yep.
But actually, some people want to spend time on the weekend with their families. So
believe it or not,
that doesn't right. They don't necessarily want to spend 7 hours training by themselves.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of nuance in there and ways to get creative. A lot of this, there are transferable principles between marathon training and ultramarathon training. It's not 100% the same thing because they are two different sports.
Yep.
But there are principles and fundamentals that transfer, and some of that does have to do with like training principle and things like that.
And honestly, I love working with road to trail athletes because road athletes always bring in a ton of badass fitness that's great on the trails. Yeah. Like I came from a hiking background, which is like
oh yeah, I'm a great hiker.
So slow twitch.
You're very slow twitch.
What a fucking stupid thing to be good at. It's like I'm great at walking.
Hey, you know what? Some people like to do 200s.
You know what? I could never. I mean, okay, here's the duality of Zoe is that I'm great at hiking and I hate being sleep deprived. I hate sleep deprivation.
You like to sleep.
I like to sleep and I like to walk. What a lame person. What a terrible personality to have. I am a curse.
I can think of worse, but I'm not going to mention any names here.
So, I mean, actually that gets to another interesting point though, that I really think that when athletes are like, I want to level up my training, the first thing I ask them is, are you ready to level the fuck up in your recovery?
Yeah.
Because that's the big thing. Do you have time to respect the work we're about to put in? Because great, you have time to do the work. You got to have time to adapt to it as well. And ultras demand a lot, and you'll need to really, really recover like a boss. So make sure that you give yourself time to adapt between hard sessions, listen to your body when it's asking for rest, and long-term consistency beats short-term overtraining every time. We are not about that panic training life. We are about that, pick a dream a year on the horizon and start training for it life.
I love it. I'll just give a quick shout out to the mental performance side of things.
Yeah.
Two different sports, marathons and ultramarathons. And so because there are unique demands in both sports, your mental performance, your mental game, that needs to be specific to the sport you're doing. So some stuff is transferable. but it always needs to be specific to the event.
Indeed it does. So we have another, speaking of 200s,
Your favorite distance?
my favorite distance. I actually do coach. I think I have like 3 athletes running Cocodona this year. So
Oh, shit.
shout out team Microcosm, getting out there, getting sleep deprived.
Yeah, get your shirts.
Better you than me. So, listener question. I'm training for Cocodona, but I work a full-time job and I have limited time to train. Should I be training with a weighted vest?
Oh.
Zag, right? That question zags right at the end.
Where are we going with this?
Yes.
Oh, weighted vest.
So, I mean, this is actually
it.
interesting because weighted vests are definitely blowing up on social media, from TikTok to Instagram. It
I
seems
thought
like
weighted ankles were blowing up lately.
oh man, that makes me think of Jane Fonda nonsense. But you're seeing a lot of runners with weighted, not even runners, I would say influence adjacent people. You call them ham boys because they kind of look like hams. Hashtag hybrid athletes.
Hybrids, yeah. You know what? It's
Welcome.
a thing out there. It's a thing out there that I try to
I probably
ignore.
can't. I'm literally wearing a cardigan that has spaghetti on it, so
Those are
bow tie farfalle.
those are nice.
Yeah, they're cute. I live the carb life. Like, y'all are just tourists here. I'm from here.
Protein only.
Protein. You're only protein now. So
Nope.
yeah. Anyway, all that is to say, I feel like there's a lot of noise around weighted vests on the internet, and there can be benefits. Like there was a study that came out that showed that like in some instances, women using them, particularly on walks, can help with bone density. But I think that and this is borne out in the evidence as well, that risks outweigh the rewards if you're not careful, because adding more than 10% of your body weight, that can really throw off your biomechanics and put extra stress on your knees, joints, and back. And there was actually one study that showed that wearing a weight vest can increase knee joint forces by 45%, which is not exactly what I'm trying to do in training. So,
What I see here is just that kind of fundamental tug of war that we all face as humans and athletes, where we kind of get attracted to what is a silver bullet in our mind, and we're like, I got to do that. That's going to be the hack that helps me unlock like this next 1% of training potential.
Yep.
Or this is going to be the thing that allows me to, finally break through at this distance.
Or like, this thing is hard, therefore it must be good training. And there is lots of stuff that is very hard that is absolutely terrible training.
And it's in our nature to want to move towards those things because we want that like instant reward. But it's just, guys, we talk about it a lot. Go back to the fundamental principles. I see no reason at all that an athlete should be training, especially running or doing hill sprints or workout or anything that like I've seen on social media with the weighted vest. One, because you're going to increase your risk for injury, but two, you're going to get really slow doing that. It's not like, good for running economy.
Yeah.
If you want to increase your strength, go to the things that are proven in evidence to increase your strength. Doing strength work and lifting heavy weights, that can help increase your running economy. Wearing a vest and running with it is not. Maybe if we've got a situation where like your UTMB kit for ultra running is like really heavy.
Or, if you're training
mine
for a 200 or a 300 mile race.
Sure, but still, like, it's not going to be as heavy as these weighted
Right, exactly.
vests.
Like, you should train with your race kit,
And
not a
yes,
weighted vest.
I
Like,
would
train with the gear you plan on racing with.
pack up your pack with the stuff that's in it that you would have for the race and race with and like train with that on to get used to it. It's just such a stretch to want to like manufacture that with just like I just get scared thinking about it.
Yeah. And just, remember that just because something is popular on social media, whether it's bicarb or a fancy VO2 max workout or the squeezy boots or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that it's like, again, just because it's like the hot new thing on Instagram this week does not mean that it should be affecting praxis today. Like
Yeah.
actual science changes slowly, and just because someone at the front of the pack is doing something, that doesn't mean that it's going to have benefits when you extrapolate to, you know, everyone else, right? It's all very like individually dependent. And so, you know, before you add a weight vest, before you start eating sodium bicarb, before you're like chugging, you know, whatever supplements, make sure that you're nailing the fundamentals. Go back and listen to our episode about the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Run consistently.
Eat cookies.
Eat cookies, focus on effort-based training, dial in your recovery, and build strength in smarter ways, ideally with a periodized strength training program designed by an expert coach.
And I would say just, you know, the big takeaway here is just train smart. Try to avoid the hacks and the silver bullets, and like get comfortable spotting in your life what those hacks and silver bullets are. Like if there's someone out there saying this is the quick way to do something, go find that person who's like, this is the slow proven way of doing something, and then just commit to being consistent at
or look at which one tends to make money, and that's usually the one that doesn't work. Like 9 times out of 10,
right?
You know?
Like weighted vests, they're probably like pretty expensive. A lot of people buy them, and there's a lot of people who are unsatisfied.
Whereas, like, I mean, yes, I guess, like, in terms of, like, having a coach to, like, periodize your training, that can be a cost. And, like, obviously we are, or I particularly am biased in favor of thinking that my job is worthwhile to have. You know, we do it, we're here. But, you know, like, we're not selling supplements, we're not selling super shoes, we're not selling any one thing. I mean, if we're selling anything, it's consistency, which is, like, the least sexy, like... I can't
trying
think
to
of
get somebody to buy into my product. It's consistency. Oh shit, I have to do this every day. That sucks. I'm definitely not signing up.
Yeah, exactly. Right. All you have to do is train every day for years. It's so easy.
And then you can do your 100-mile week.
Yeah, but you know, I think the main takeaway here is to train smart and not trendy. So they can be a tool that have benefits in some very specific use cases. But what you really need to do is move past the Instagram hype and focus on what really moves the needle. Smart, consistent, effort-based training. Just like N of one, my personal experience, I am not in a place where I am focused on the fundamentals. Right now, I am trying to get really good about my recovery. And instead of trying to buy a stupid supplement or like chug some fancy shake or like do some crazy program, I'm just trying to like say no to things, get off my screens in the evening, set better work-life boundaries. Like, these things are not
big
sexy.
picture.
Yeah.
Oh,
and like no one's gonna make a YouTube series about me like getting better at, you know, saying no to things. Unfortunately.
I would like to be, I guess I get a window seat into this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you do get, you're an early subscriber.
So if we're not going to get a weighted vest to build volume, how do we do that?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about building volume over time. So it's important to build volume as a runner. Like, if you want to get better, you have to increase load over time, right? Stress plus rest equals adaptation. If you don't have stress, aka doing more than you're currently adapted to, you're not going to get that adaptation. Likewise, rest, always a really important part of that as well. I often hear athletes thinking about the 10% rule, and that's not really a thing. It's like a decent rule of thumb. Like, if you're totally new to running, you don't have a coach, you don't have a strong background, increasing by 10% is a solid place to start, but it's definitely not a universal law. And what really matters is how much you're increasing your volume relative to your baseline mileage. So if you're running low mileage, a 10% increase is manageable, but for higher mileage, that same percentage could push your limits too far, right? For some people, 10% could be, 2 miles. For me right now, it'd be an additional 10 miles. I could not do 10% more next week. That would, no. I don't have the recovery in place.
Sure you don't want to do a 110-mile week?
Oh my God, that makes me so tired thinking about it. Maybe 10 years from now.
I like to, if you're self-coached out there, this is going to be really helpful information for you. So think about focusing on gradual progress.
Yep.
Over the course of a training block rather than on increasing week by week. Yeah. And I think you could also think about surging above your weekly average and then coming back down to your baseline.
Like doing a
weekly
more
average.
oscillating style
Yes.
of, yeah.
So that way you've got, like you have 1 week that's very stressful, maybe 2 weeks, depending on your level. If you're newer, less time above your baseline is probably preferable. But if you're a more experienced athlete, you can flirt with more time above that baseline, and that's going to help bring your floor up over time. But you surge above it, and then you come back down. You surge above it, then you come back down. And, that can work in a lot of different ways when you're programming stuff. Like, that could just be for your long run volume. That could be your whole weekly volume. That could be your monthly volume, or that could be the volume of your whole training block. It depends on how you want to structure that. And what we've seen in our coaching is that those surges above are usually best done when you've got more of the time availability and less life stress going on. Because stress is like, they compound.
Dude, I feel like the biggest mistake, I mean, this is like a pretty specific mistake, but sometimes I'll have an athlete, they'll have a career change, like they'll get fired or they'll like move jobs, or they'll have like a moment where they're like not in work and they suddenly think, oh boy, finally I have all this time to train, without factoring in like the potential stresses that come along with that. And that, like, again, like, gravity doesn't give a shit if you have more free time.
Nope.
Physics does not care what your schedule looks like. Those are sort of immutable realities.
I wish that it was more simple than that, but the process of building up your volume and increasing how much time you spend running is a process of building awareness as an athlete.
Yeah, and I would also say, some athletes might be volume limited. As athletes get older, we might look at building their volume through low impact cross training. Go back and listen to an episode about masters athletes. It's obviously going to be preferable to build volume through running because that's more specific, but also low impact cross training can be a great way of building volume too. We have a lot of badass, I know we actually, I don't believe in the term hybrid athletes. All athletes are hybrid athletes. We have many very talented multi-sport athletes on our team.
Multi-sport.
And that's different, and they're amazing.
Yeah. Build up for a couple weeks, then come down like we were mentioning, and really having a polarized and periodized approach to your training. So you should have specific days that are easy, and specific days that are for recovery, and specific days that are high stress.
Yeah, so as we've talked about, I've recently really restructured my training and working with a new coach. And I was looking at my stress distribution from last week on my 101 mile week. Every day I either ran 7 miles or 20 or more.
That's wild.
No in between.
Right, no gray area.
No gray area.
Yep.
I was either running 7 miles at like 9:20 pace or doing a workout or a long run.
And
that's periodization, folks.
Right, and it's a good way of controlling the variables that come at play and making sure that there's adequate time for recovery, which is so important, because when you run your easy days a little too hard, that compounds.
Yeah.
When you don't take recovery time, you don't get adaptations. So then your body, especially, we're talking a lot, and this isn't always about aerobic adaptation, it's about structural adaptations as well. So if you don't take that recovery time, then your body, your joints, your tendons, your ligaments, your bones, all of that doesn't have time to catch up.
Yeah. And, this is some like with more advanced athletes who aren't time and stress limited, we can think about adding in easy doubles, like either a cross training double on a hard day, right? Like, you don't, like, easy days need to stay easy. Again, just the 7 miles, super easy. And one thing we always, I think a mistake that athletes will sometimes make is like, well, I don't have time to do all my volume at once. I'll just split it up. And no, that fundamentally changes the adaptation. But doubles can be a way of concentrating stress on those hard days. So on workout days or on like endurance run, like 90 to 2 hour days, you can do a double in the evening. Again, only in the presence of abundant energy and, recovery ability, but don't resist the temptation to just split your runs up willy-nilly, because that does change things. And I think another place that we always want to look at that volume is making sure to get, or wanting to get, long runs to about 20 to potentially 30% of weekly mileage. And instead of big jumps or doing all of your, like, one thing we want to avoid too is having your long runs be super long relative to, like, well, I'm running, 5 miles once during the week, and then I'm doing 25 on the weekend when I have time to do an adventure with my buddies. And it's like, oh boy, that is just enough volume to, like, absolutely shock your body, and also absolutely not enough consistent stress to have it actually adapt to that.
Right, totally. Listen to your body, guys. Like I said earlier, this is a process of building awareness. There are certain training principles you can follow, but there's not a lot of, like, hard and fast rules outside of wanting to have periodized training. You want to have your recovery days. You want to have your high stress days.
Yep.
And play the long game. Like, these increases take place over seasons. And when you really look at it, like, from a zoomed out 30,000 foot perspective, like, a great increase for an athlete is like 10% more year to year. It's probably pretty difficult to do more than that. And sometimes you actually won't always progress that volume because maybe you are increasing time at intensity instead. Like, there's other factors here too that you need to think about. And so when you're working on one variable, sometimes the other variables you're not able to put as much energy into, or else you increase your risk for injury. So be really cognizant of that.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about how to use training volume and density, and how to use that density as a way, like, how to think about that in terms of building volume. Again, thinking of the concept of polarization in your training. What does that look like, and how you structure your athletes' training plans?
Depends on the athlete, whether we're doing, like, a hybrid style or more of a block style of training, but the principle is kind of the same. Like, if your athlete's running 9 hours a week, how are you distributing that stress? Are you doing, like, 6 90-minute runs, or are you doing a couple 1 hour runs that are for recovery, and then, maybe a 3 hour long run, and then 2 90-minute runs or something? Right. I think that's probably about 9 hours.
Yep.
Math. But like, how are you distributing that? Is there a workout in there? Are there 2 workouts in there? And then how much time for recovery between the hard days? So, like, I always like to have 24 to 48 hours of recovery, or very, very easy runs between the higher intensity work.
So, like, between the workout and the long run, that's a big one I always see. Like, when I'm sort of trying to, like, Tetris my athletes' training plans, the sort of big tent poles I'm revolving around are, how do we make sure there's sufficient time between the workout and the long run, and how do we keep one solid rest day in? And those are sort of the, like, things that I'm trying to operate around.
Or the workout and the next workout to totally...
Correct, if you're doing 2 workouts.
Yeah, it depends on the athlete level, but there's, you could think about putting the hardest days first in the week when you're freshest, or the hardest days in the first block of the week, then recovery in between, then the next hardest, then a little less hard, then recovery. There's a lot of different ways to structure it, but a good rule to follow is, like, hardest stuff up front, recovery in between.
Yep.
Don't do a gray area run and then a hard day after and expect to feel your best on that hard day.
Yeah.
Put the hard day first, coming off of the recovery when you're freshest.
Yep.
That session matters more because it's a higher stress day.
Yeah. And again, this is just, like, why paying attention to that training structure is important, and not just doing workouts willy-nilly, because each run is in conversation with itself, and how much recovery you're bringing into any one activity impacts how productive it will be. So, like, going into your workouts tired because you did a HIIT workout at the gym for no reason the day before, that's not ideal. Riding a century on Saturday, then trying to do your long run on Sunday, well, that's also probably not ideal.
What do you think are some practical takeaways here for folks?
Yeah, so I would say, like, when life forces you to split a 2-hour run into 2 1-hour sessions, aim to keep at least 75% of the original work intact in one go. So that helps maintain the training density and effectiveness of the plan. So I would say, even more ideal, instead of splitting it into just 2 1-hour sessions, having, like, a 90-minute session and then a 30-minute session is, like, going to be even more ideal, rather than the gray zone of, like, 2 1-hour sessions.
obviously the 2-hour run all at once is going to be the higher stress. So most important, best option. But maintaining as much of that as you can if life throws you like a curveball is huge.
Or also being able to make the decision of like, okay, well, I can't do a 2-hour run, but I can do 90 minutes. And instead of trying to force a double, like if you're tired and work is crazy and you've got a sick kid at home and your dog was barfing in the middle of the night, then like maybe take that 30 minutes to rest. Maybe take that 30 minutes to, like make sure you're getting that food, put your feet up. Like, remember, the most productive thing to do isn't always to cram in more training. It could be to make sure you're getting sufficient recovery so that the training you're already doing makes sense.
No, it's so key. And remember, it's not all about the hours you put in, but how you structure them.
Yep.
Keeping those like sessions, like 1 or 2 hard days recovery, or 1 hard day recovery. Hard and easy, and easy. Making sure that like periodization is there and that density, that's going to help you maximize the quality of those hard days. You're going to get more out of your workouts. That means more time at the desired intensity level, so a higher likelihood of adaptation. And that's going to be the best way to continue to progress, rather than kind of just like throwing a little bit of hard stuff every single day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully
hard days hard, easy days easy.
Yeah. Feels simple.
Increase volume slowly over time, and maybe one day in 6 years you will also run a 101.2 mile week and feel unchanged and live to tell about it. Here I am, thriving, glowing even. Did I have 3 cookies for breakfast? I did.
I also have had 3 cookies today.
I made some really good cookies.
They are
Check
good.
out my Your Diet Sucks Instagram page for the recipe.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week. As usual, microcosm-coaching.com, microcosmcoaching@gmail.com. We appreciate the listener questions and would love to hear more from you guys.